any swear the testimony that is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Sit there. You may proceed, counsel.
How are you employed?
I'm a detective with the Kentucky State Police, currently assigned Post 15 Columbia.
And how long have you been with the Kentucky State Police?
Since 2003.
And before that, were you employed anywhere else?
Yes, I was previously with the Lexington Police Department for a couple of years, and also with the Campbellsville Police Department for approximately a year.
And when did you become a detective?
In 2007.
And how many homicides have you investigated?
Post 15 covers 11 counties. We, in a usual year we'll average 10 to 15 homicides per year. So been doing it since 2007. I don't know what that works out to, but a lot.
And were you involved in investigating this specific case?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you get involved in this case?
I was contacted on September 26th. Actually, I was at post when the call came in from the Sheriff's Department or from Cumberland County 911 in reference to that they had located a body at 3619 Glasgow Road. The detective sergeant, Billy Gregory, advised me to respond to the scene, and so I left post a short time after that.
How do you get assigned to certain cases?
Typically, the detective sergeant's the one that makes assignments. It just varies. Sometimes they'll go by, like if someone's had a homicide case recently, that if a new one comes in, they'll try to assign it to somebody else just so that you don't get overwhelmed. But generally, when we get a homicide case, all of the detectives at post will have some involvement. Either you might get assigned to collect evidence and photograph the scene, or you might get assigned to go to the autopsy. I mean, typically, there's at least 3 or 4 detectives that are involved in every homicide investigation.
Now, as far as you being a detective, is there only one area that you investigate? Are you only assigned to murders, or are there other?
No, I have homicide cases right now in Washington County. That's as far north as we go. I mean, I've had cases in Cumberland County, Monroe County. It's just scattered throughout. And some of that's due because we rotate on call. So if you're a detective that's on call and a homicide case comes in, then you're going to get the case regardless because you're the one that's on call.
Were you on call this day?
No, it actually came in during our normal work hours, and I was just at post, so I ended up getting assigned the case.
Did anyone else assist you with investigating this case?
Yes, Detective DeBree, of course, I met him. He came to the scene, and then Detective Zach Stockman. Detective Josh Dickin initially came down and worked on the search warrant. I'm trying to think of anybody else. That's the only ones I can think of off the top of my head initially.
But as far as who was leading the investigation?
I was the case officer.
Now, once you arrived on scene, what steps did you take as far as your investigation, your initial investigation?
So when I first got there, of course, the scene had already been secured, and one of the troopers was already there maintaining the crime scene log. So when I actually first got there, the first thing I did was I talked briefly to the sheriff at the time, Scott Daniels, and he was describing to me the missing person case that they had, and they suspected that this was the person from the missing person case. Then shortly after that, of course, I learned about how the body was discovered as far as the real estate agent coming to show the property and that sort of thing. A short time after that, myself and Detective Bree, we went through the scene, photographing as we went, just to see what we were looking at. We're seeing the crime scene photographs. The victim was pretty badly decomposed. You couldn't really tell how many times he'd been shot. I could tell there was at least 2 wounds to the head. There was only 1 shell casing in there, which was kind of early indicator to me that it looked like someone had picked up or removed shell casings from the scene.
And why is that? Why was that an indication to you?
He's got more than 1 gunshot wound. There's only 1 shell casing there. That would be typical of somebody that was trying to cover up a crime scene, would be to pick up shell casings to remove them from the scene so that you couldn't do ballistic testing or testing them.
Now, as far as the shell casing, what did you notice about it?
It was a Hornady 45 caliber shell casing.
And Who was the body that was laying there?
Michael Hardy.
Now, had you ever heard that name prior to that specific day on finding him?
Yes. The previous week, I was at post in the detective office, and Captain Stott had gotten a phone call from Julie Hardy, and right after he got a phone call, he had stepped back into the office and was just telling me about the phone call, because I think even at that point he thought it was a bit bizarre or suspicious, the conversation we had.
So you heard that name, Michael Harding, was missing at that point?
Yes, he relayed to me that Clay County Sheriff's Department was the one that had the missing person case, but that she had called the post, and again, just the oddity of it.
Now, you said that his body was decomposing, like the condition of it. What was the condition of the home when you arrived?
It was vacant. There wasn't any furniture or anything in it like that. You've already heard the description. There's kind of a main house, and then there was a garage kind of between the two properties, and then there's a smaller house, and the smaller house is where his body was at. From talking to the homeowners, my understanding is I think they had moved to Bowling Green in July that year. They listed the property for sale not long after that, and so it had been for sale for essentially August and September.
Now, was there anything else that you found odd about the scene as far as the cleanup?
The victim's truck was inside of the garage, which just didn't make any sense. When you got an empty house for sale, this two-car garage, and then the truck is sitting in the garage, it just didn't make any sense.
Now, after you viewed the scene, did you speak to anyone or interview anyone?
Yes, I interviewed Alan Sewell.
Okay. And why Alan Sewell?
They had pointed, identified him as the person that had the property listed, and he was there at the scene. So Detective Debris had actually interviewed Tammy Walters, the real estate agent, or was in the process of getting ready to interview the real estate agent from Bowling Green, and the clients that she had with her showed them the property. And so I just first went and interviewed Alan Sewell.
And what information did you gather from him?
He told me about that prior to that date, the last time that anybody had called about the property was on September the 19th. Essentially you heard, he related to me the information as far as that the person that called about showing the property that time, they initially called and it went to his voicemail, they left a voicemail, and then a short time later he called them back and ended up, essentially the conversation was the same thing as what they'd said in the voicemail. They gave him a key code to the residence, and that nobody had called about the property between that time, between the 19th and the 26th. He also said that he had tried to call and text later on that night to see if the person was interested in the property, and they never answered or never returned him his text or anything. And he also played the voicemail to me that he had on his phone.
And you said you listened to the voicemail.
Yes, ma'am.
Was there anything that you recognized on the voicemail?
In the voicemail, when the person pronounces Glasgow, it sounded odd to me. It sounded like somebody that, no other way to describe it, just not live around here. It wasn't the normal way that people around here pronounce Glasgow.
How did they pronounce it?
The Glasgow, and in the recorded, it's like Glasgow is the pronunciation.
And you heard the recording here yesterday.
Yes, ma'am.
It was hard to hear.
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, Your Honor, we would like to play it again. We think we've got a better setup.
You have to have better stuff. Go ahead.
Exhibit number 1.
problem that we've got, if you don't plug it into the system, it doesn't go into the record clearly. But it did go into the record clearly previously. So this will be audible and will be picked up through the system. So if anyone wants to take a look at what it is later, they'll have to go two places. Go ahead. We'll see how it sounds. You go to your phone and see how it sounds.
Let's take them to look at your glass camera. Yeah, hi, this is Bruce Reynolds, Keller Williams. I have a client, cash customer that's trying to get a phone in that. I'd like to take them to look at your glass gallon up there in Burkeville. If you would please stop back when you have an opportunity, see if there's access today or town, and we're going to pick up by tomorrow. So please call me.
Now, does that fairly and accurately reflect the voicemail that you heard on September the 26th?
Yes, ma'am.
So after you heard this voicemail, did you get any other information about the caller?
Return that to the clerk.
Yeah, so after listening to the recording, rather than try to call that phone number back, the first thing I did was I called the intelligence analyst at Post 15, and I asked her to run that phone number that he received that voicemail from to see if it was associated with Keller Williams, and she told me it was not. Then I asked her if she could look and see if she could find Bruce Reynolds with Keller Williams, if that person existed, and if they had a phone number listed for them, and she did, and so I called that number. I spoke briefly to Bruce Reynolds, the person who testified here the other day, and just same thing, he told me he had never been to Burkeville, Kentucky before, that he did work for Keller Williams, but he lived in Louisville, and most of the property that he dealt with was in Louisville and southern Indiana.
And what was that telephone number?
It was a 732-306-2550.
What other information after you've been able to verify that did you find out about this phone number?
When she ran it, it also immediately came up and was showing that it was a prepaid cell phone, that it wasn't associated with any particular person.
So after you interviewed Alan Sewell and you found that information out, what other information did you find out at the scene?
So as we were finishing up the scene, well, first of all, because the truck, again, just the oddity of the whole situation of it being parked in a garage, and it just didn't fit with anything there. So I had to ask Sergeant Gregory, I'm like, if this truck has been inside the garage since the 19th, there's a good chance that there might be some evidence there. And so I requested if we could just hold the scene overnight and have our crime scene unit from the lab come down and process it the next morning. Because I felt like with them processing, there would probably be a better chance of getting DNA or fingerprint evidence, or something like that. And so he agreed. We also, the victim, Michael Harding, his phone was in his front pocket. So we went ahead and removed that before the body was taken out of the scene. And again, I requested from Sergeant Gregory if he could go ahead and run it up to the lab the next day and start getting the victim's phone downloaded.
Now, did the body stay there overnight?
No, once we removed the phone, the coroner removed the body from the scene, and it was sent to Louisville for an autopsy that took place the next morning.
Now, as far as the one shell casing in the house, did you locate any other evidence inside the home?
So we looked, we couldn't find any other, again, could not find any other shell casings even after the body had been removed. It was getting kind of late in the evening, and we knew we were going to hold the scene overnight and have the lab response team to come down and process it. So we didn't really, we kind of stopped, cut it off at that point. Myself and Debris, we were actually still at the scene, but he got a call from Sheriff Brandon Boone saying that Julie Hardy was there, wanted to know what was going on. I think Detective Debris, best I remember, I think he actually put him on speakerphone. And I said, if you can just have her see if she will meet us at the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office, and we'll meet her there and talk to her. And again, at that point, I was just thinking in terms of doing next in-depth notification. So in that conversation, he indicated she agreed to meet us there. And so, again, we the scene was secure, had a trooper there maintaining the crime scene logs, and myself and Detective Bree left and went to the sheriff's office. But the following day, Detective Bree went back out there to meet the crime scene processing people from the lab, and that morning they located a projectile that had passed through the victim, went through a wall, and was laying on the floor in an adjacent room.
And you said the crime scene, you had showed up to process the scene.
Yes, ma'am. The next morning,
The next
on the 27th.
And did they take in all the evidence that they could find there?
Yes, I think, as best I recall, I think Detective Debris actually collected the projectile, but they processed, and the way it works with our crime scene processing unit, if they can come to a scene, they will process and collect evidence, but then they turn it over to the detective that's at the scene, and the detective takes it to post book it into evidence. And then it's usually the case officer that later on does what's called a KSB 26 as far as submitting it and sending it to the lab and that sort of thing.
Were you present whenever they were processing the scene?
No, ma'am.
And did you do any more interviews at the scene?
Not at the scene, no, ma'am.
Do you know if anybody did any canvassing of the neighbors?
Yes, Detective Debris.
Did he relay that information to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there any tips that you got from him?
Yes, he had told me about this interview with Mr. Willis regarding the what it seems to be a description of the victim's truck in the silver car, and then I don't know if you want me to keep going with it, and so.
But you did receive that tip.
Yes, I had that information.
We'll get into it later, but you all were accepting any tips that you could to solve the.
Yes,
the
it's
murder.
just normal protocol when we work on homicide, even though we work predominantly in rural areas, we generally try to do a neighborhood canvass where we just try to contact all the neighbors or people that live in the area to see if they've seen or heard anything.
And you're following any leads that you can get.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't have any suspects yet.
That's correct.
Okay, so you said that Julie Harding on the 26th that was supposed to meet you at the Cumberland County Sheriff's Department.
Yes, ma'am.
So once you got there, what happened?
So when we got there, actually, we was talking to the sheriff and some of the deputies there, and they were telling us again about this missing person case from the 19th, and they had explained to me that they had cameras on the courthouse, and that they had actually went through that video and had located video of the victim, Michael Harding's truck, coming around the courthouse on the 19th. So I had asked him, I was like, can you make me a copy of any video that you got from that day? On the south-facing camera, some of it had already been copied over, and so they only had like a 1 hour time frame from when the Michael Harding's truck comes from the south-facing camera. But on the north-facing camera, for whatever reason, they had not copied over that yet, and so I got a much broader time frame from that north-facing camera. The other thing that they explained to me early on was the time on the clock, or I mean the time on the camera, was behind by 1 hour from the actual time.
And were you able to confirm that in any way about the time?
Yes, on the north-facing camera, when you're watching it, if you look closely, there's actually a bank sign out there, and there's certain parts where you can see that the bank, the time on the bank sign is correct.
Now, whenever you got this footage, did you review it?
Yes, ma'am. I did, and that we were busy that night. I did, but over the following few days, I did review it.
And when you are reviewing it, what are you looking for?
Early on, again, all we had was this description of the silver car, so I was looking for a silver car, but I really didn't have any time frame. I was trying to look for I mean, easily I located the victim's truck coming around the square. Again, they had already located it, so I was kind of keyed in on that. But, I just really didn't have much. I was trying to look for silver cars that maybe come before him or shortly after. When you start looking at silver cars, it's kind of shocking how many silver cars there are. There was actually one point when Detective Bree, I was like, can you call him back and see if we can get a better description on the car? And he did, but it was, he called back to get a description, but the description was, again, not much better. He couldn't really describe it, other than saying it was gray or silver.
And so while you're at the courthouse, did Julie Harding show up?
No.
And what time of day are we at this?
It was late in the evening. I don't remember the exact time we got to the courthouse, but it's just estimated it was probably after 4 or something like that. We were there, and they were showing us the surveillance video from the courthouse, and during that time, actually, I tried to call her one time before we even left the scene. And I called from the number that she had used to call Captain Brad Stotts the previous week. I got the number from him.
You already had that number just because she called KSD a week prior.
Yes. So I actually tried to call her one time before we even left the scene. Of course, I thought, well, it went to voicemail, and I thought, well, she's probably in an area where she didn't have service. I didn't think much about it. So then when we were there at the courthouse, there's, I don't know how long, probably an hour, 2 hours, she doesn't show up. During that time, I had tried to call her a couple more times, and it kept going to voicemail. Each time I was leaving a message that, this is Detective Hardin, Deputy State Police, I'd like to be with you, talk to you about your husband, something to that effect. And then during that time, we had also identified Michael Harding's girlfriend, Natasha Davis, and Paul Wilhelm, one of his friends, and so we had contacted them and made arrangements for them to come to the Clay County Sheriff's Office to do an interview. And the thinking was, well, let's just head on down to Clay County, and then maybe she'll end up, maybe she got confused or got lost or whatever, maybe she'll show back up at the Sheriff's Office down there, we can interview her down there.
Now, you didn't give any indication as to what was going on to Sheriff Boone whenever he first called you about Julie Harding?
No.
So there wasn't any message for him to give her to not be answering her calls?
Correct.
So you go to Clay County to interview Natasha Davis and some of Michael Harding's friends. Do you recall who you interviewed besides Natasha?
It was Paul Wilhelm and Natasha Davis was who we interviewed on that first.
And what information did you find out from them?
Again, the thing that immediately came to the forefront is this contentious divorce between Michael and Julie Harding. Just a general overall description, both of them had talked about how on the 19th, Michael had told both of them that he had this HVAC service repair call in Burkesville, and that he planned to go there, check on the HVAC service call, and then he was going to go on to Bowling Green and pick up a tuxedo for the wedding that he was supposed to be in that weekend. And again, throughout the interview, they both of them talked about the little sticky notes in Michael's house. They talked about the problems or issues that was going on as far as the divorce with Julie Harding, how she was taking money out of the account. It was overall theme. It was kind of the same thing for the divorce.
Did they bring up any other conflict that Michael had going on in his life at that time?
No.
And then, so after you had that information, did you ever try to reach out to Julie Harding?
Yes, I think I tried to call her another time or two when we were in Clay County. The following morning on the 27th, the first thing I did was I come to the state police post and called her from a state police, like an old-fashioned landline. So just to make sure that it would show up on her phone, that if the phone call was coming from the Kentucky State Police, left her a message again, no return calls or anything like that. I tried to call her again a couple of times throughout the day. I think it was late on the evening of the 27th. I tried to call her again, and I started getting an automated message where the voicemail box was full.
So now at this point, what happened on the next day?
So on the 27th, I received a call from Michael Harding's divorce attorney in California. Again, related to me the same information what I got from the video plate interview the night before, and she ended up sending me the divorce paperwork. They had been filed in California.
Do you recall the date that this divorce paperwork had been filed?
Yes, it was filed on May the 25th of 2022.
So that same year, but in May on 25th day.
Yes.
Any other information did you find out about their divorce?
Yes, well, the divorce papers, when she sent them to me, of course, I looked over them, and it has a list of the assets, and there's a little bit about the contention or whatever's going on in the divorce papers.
Was there any issues with money during their divorce?
Yes, and so that started saying, so also on the 27th, from the interviews the night before, they had talked about Julie taking this money out of accounts just 2 days before she filed for divorce. And so on the 27th, I ran what's called a FinCEN and SARS, a suspicious activity report, and it just corroborated what the Natasha Davis and Paul Wilhelm had told me the night before, that she had withdrawn. Just 2 days prior to filing for divorce, she had withdrawn $102,000 from different accounts in Tennessee.
Do you recall how she withdrew this? What form did it come in whenever she withdrew it?
Yeah, it was odd. The money was withdrawn from like 3 separate accounts, and then she deposited them in a separate account and just under her name, and then she turned around and withdrew the cash from that account in her name.
So she took it in cash,
Yes, ma'am.
and she did all of this on the same day,
Yes, ma'am.
2 days before she filed for divorce.
Yes, ma'am.
And the divorce was in California.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Counselor Islam.
Yes, ma'am.
So now that you got this information, did you learn anything else on the day after that you found it?
I think,
Did you find out anything from the autopsy?
yes. So I had talked to Detective Zach Scott, went to the autopsy, and in the wound path during the autopsy, there's they describe it as a reddish orange as part of the projectile. And of course, we had recovered a Hornady shell casing from the scene, so I was kind of looking around. That kind of struck me as being odd. And so I found that Hornady critical defense bullets, they use like this reddish orange gel insert into the hollow points.
And what's the purpose of that?
So a traditional, years ago, a hollow point would just be an open space in the center. And the reason they do a hollow point is because it's meant to expand. Bullet's meant to stop a person. So when it hits the human body, it's meant to expand and exert all its force inside the body. So over a period of years, what ammunition manufacturers have discovered that oftentimes, if it's, again, you can use the hypothetical of a defensive situation, but if someone is shot and they're wearing like a heavy winter coat, or if they're shot through like a vehicle or something like that, with that traditional hollow point, oftentimes it'll open up and it'll expand and not actually penetrate the person or penetrate the car. So what they started doing is they'll put like almost this plastic gelatin type insert inside of the hollow point, and that allows that hollow point to stay together enough that if someone's shot through like a heavy winter coat, it will actually penetrate through the heavy winter coat and into the body before it starts expanding. The unique thing or the different thing about Hornady is that they use this reddish orange ballistic gelatin in the hollow point. Most hollow points that you see that use that, it's oftentimes just a clear plastic color.
Now, how were you able to confirm that with the medical examiner's report?
Medical examiner actually denotes it in her autopsy, or his or her autopsy report. A couple of the wound paths, when they're describing it, they describe that reddish orange. I think they describe it as part of the projectile, but you can actually see it in the autopsy report.
And how many times, at that point, what were you able to discover about how many times he'd been shot?
It's that he had been shot 4 times, twice in the head and 2 in the body.
And you said that when you first went to the scene, it was hard to tell immediately or ascertain that the amount.
Yeah, it looked like he had been shot in the body at the scene, but again, the decomposure level was so bad that we couldn't really tell and knew he was going to be, the body was going to be set for an autopsy anyway, so.
Now, were there any guns recovered from the scene?
There was a gun, the following day when the crime scene unit processed the scene, there was a .40 caliber lock gun that was inside of Michael Hardy's truck, was in the center console.
And it didn't match what would have killed him?
No, that's again, the shell case was a .45 caliber shell case, and the gun in the truck was a .40 caliber guns, two different caliber guns.
And was it one of the guns that was mentioned earlier from Mr. Lyons?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
That's put in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you find any weapons at all that would have matched when it shot?
No, ma'am, not at the same time.
Okay. So what other information did you have from the scene to move on to your investigation?
From the scene,
What about from his cell phone? Did you ever find out anything from his?
so I didn't start getting information back from the cell phone until the 29th. The evening of the 27th, Natasha Davis contacted me. I had gave her my business card when we done an interview with her the night before down there, but she called me and was telling me that Julie Harding had contacted her about getting this dog, the dog that had belonged to Michael Harding. She had asked me about exchanging the dog. She said she's supposed to meet me at the Clay County Sheriff's Office. And of course, at that point, I was like, there's no reason. That's up to you. If you want to give the dog back to her, that's between you and her. There's no reason I have why you shouldn't give it back to her or whatever. But in that conversation, I asked her, I was like, so how did you get in contact with her? Because I've been trying to get in contact with her since we were at the scene. And so she told me that she had texted Julie, and I said, what number did you text her on, or what number did you get a text from her on? And it was the same number that I had been calling, but then she said Julie had called her back on a different phone number. And so I got that phone number from her, and I tried to call that number to get in contact with Julie.
And were you able to get in touch?
No, it's the same thing with the voicemail.
Now, did you ever perform any type of search on Michael Harding's house in Salina?
Yes, I think that was I believe that was the 20th when we did the search warrant at Michael Harding's residence.
And who did you do that with in conjunction with?
The Clay County Sheriff's Office. Of course, that was one of my problems right from the beginning on this case is jurisdictional issues. Needed to do a search warrant on his house, but it's in Salina, Tennessee. I have no authority in Salina, Tennessee, so luckily Detective Bree had a relationship with Sheriff Boone, so we reached out to him and we worked through their office to get a search warrant for the residents.
So just for the purpose of, for everybody to know, where is Salina in connection with Burkesville?
It's just south of Burkesville.
They border each other.
Yes, ma'am.
And so when you went to Salina to assist with this search, what did you all find there?
We found there was the little sticky notes that were kind of posted everywhere in the house, found those, and then we found there were some notes and paperwork. There was like some notes related to like a quiet claim deed. And there was actually a note also on Michael Harding's phone. It was almost like a proposal for this divorce where he was offering that Julie do a quiet claim deed to deed the house in Sacramento back to him.
So just more evidence of a contentious divorce.
Yes, ma'am.
And you mentioned his cell phone. You said you would have got his records from his cell phone on the 29th as well?
I started getting records on the 29th that was when they started downloading the PCB, the electronic crime records.
And what information was being relayed to you about his phone?
The first thing was that it was consistent with what Natasha Davis and Paul Wilkham had told us in their interviews about him coming to Burkesville for HVAC service repair. You could see on the text messages and the phone calls where he gets called about this HVAC service repair, and then if you look, there's a text message where the person uses the name James Frazier and gives the address on Glasgow Road. And then if you follow the text messages, it's just what you would expect to see. Like it's Michael Harding texting as I'm on my way, or I'm so many minutes out, and then the person responds, okay, and it's typical what you would expect to see for someone that's going to an HVAC service.
So reading these text messages, it appears that Michael Harding is texting someone by the name of James Frazier.
Yes, ma'am.
And what was the exact address that he was supposed to go to do the service job?
It was the 3619 Glasgow Road address.
And it was here in Cumberland County.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall the date that he was receiving those text messages?
It was on the 19th,
Were you able,
September the 19th.
were you able to confirm what phone number was sending these text messages?
Yes, ma'am. It was the same phone number that had called Alan Sewell claiming to be Bruce Reynolds with Keller Williams Real Estate. It was the same 732-306-2550 phone number.
Did you find out anything else about Michael Harding's phone?
I think, I don't remember on that particular day, it's later on when I was looking through the download of the phone, of course, there's a whole string of messages between him and Julie from back in May, right before she files for divorce. And in that string of messages, he confronts her about taking $102,000 out of the account. And I imagine they entered at some point, she didn't read them and see. And then in that string of messages, he also confronts her about, or accuses her, or says something to the effect about her coming to the house, taking 2 of his guns and 2 silencers from the home.
Were you able to recover any guns from Michael Harding's house in Salina?
No, when we were out there, we never make access to the safe that was there. We called the safe company, which we've had that come up before in search warrants. That's just sometimes there are normal procedures. You try to call the safe company. Usually you can fax and search warrant, copy and search warrant, and give you an access code. But some safe companies, they don't have a universal access code, so sometimes you just can't get into them. And what we also figured out, actually I think while we were at the scene, is that Julie Harding had actually flew in from California on the 23rd, and so she had already been to that house before we ever did the search warrant.
But from the records that you viewed on the Southwest or the flight records, that she hadn't been there until the 23rd.
Correct, yes.
After Michael had already went missing.
Yes.
Now, had you been able to make any contact with Julie?
No, we made contact with her that day, but it was only through, we were finishing up serving the search warrant. Sue Estet, we noticed it's an elderly neighbor that lived just up the road from her. We noticed her sitting on the porch, and so we went up there to talk to her. And when we were talking to her, she said that Julie had been there and that she had spent the night with her. And so I explained to Sue again that I was trying to get in contact with Julie. I need to talk to her, concern her husband, that sort of thing. So I asked Sue, can you call Julie and tell her we're here and see if she'll come here? And so that's what she did. We waited. It was probably 20 or 30 minutes. We actually didn't think Julie was going to show up because we knew we went back down there to the scene. And then right as we got back down there to the house we were searching, we see Julie pull into the driveway, and so we went back up there. At that point, I introduced myself to her, explained to her, about her husband, that I was wanting to sit down and talk to her, and she told me that she had already retained an attorney and gave me her business card for her attorney.
And what do you know as far as her status with law enforcement?
Well, I knew from the previous call when she had contacted Captain Stotts, she was a captain in the California Highway Patrol.
And what was your understanding as to why she was still in California and Michael Harding was in Salina?
She had, so my understanding.
Just give an overview of the relationship that you were made aware of.
Okay. So my understanding is like that, so they get married in 2019. Under the California Highway Patrol, you have to be 50 before you can retire, and she wasn't 50, but my understanding is that they were wanting to move out of California. So they had looked around at different houses. They found this house in Tennessee that they liked, and so they ended up buying the house in Tennessee with plans to move there when she retired. Michael had an HVAC service business in Sacramento, and so he had decided to go ahead and sell his business out there moved to Salina, and so he could go ahead and get his business started up in Salina, his HVAC service business in Salina, started up the business there. So during that time frame, whatever happened in the relationship happened, and so they end up, again, they ended up just wanting a divorce in May, and she never did. My understanding, I don't think she liked that she came and stayed in Salina some, and she didn't like it there, decided she didn't want to move there. And then she was, what I discovered later on in the investigation, that she was actually off on medical leave with the California Highway Patrol. And I think the way it worked out there is like periodically she was having to go to doctor's appointments for them to sign off or say whether she was capable of going back to work or not.
So you said you have now found that the same number that contacted, pretending to be Bruce Reynolds to Alan Sewell, is also the same number that contacted Michael Harding.
Yes, ma'am.
So now that you've got that, what do you do with that phone number?
Well, I mean, it's pretty evident at this point that the victim was lured to that location under the pretenses of he's going to do an HVAC service call. So we actually done the first search warrant, I think, that night on that phone number. And again, we already had, before I even got started getting information from Michael Harding's phone, we already had information that obviously this person that's using this number is pretending to be Bruce Reynolds, and it's not him. So we did the first search warrant that night, and we ended up doing a couple more search warrants. Actually, I think 3 more search warrants. And each time when I've done a search warrant, I was just asking for additional information. I included like locational information and Nelo's location on the search warrants when I did the subsequent search warrants. And I think the last one I did, I also included, I was asking for subscriber information, payer information, just to see if I could find out anything about how the phone was paid for or the service was paid for.
Now, is KSP the only agency that's investigating this case in September of 22?
No. So as I explained, like right from the beginning, I was dealing with a couple of things. Number one, jurisdictional issues. I knew right from the beginning I was going to get to some point where I would need to do search warrants or subpoenas in California as well as Tennessee. And so traditionally the way we operate, we need assistance in another state, we contact the other state agency, which in this case would have been the California Highway Patrol. With her being a captain in the California Highway Patrol, if I start cold calling to California to get assistance on a search warrant or subpoena, I don't know if I'm going to bump into somebody that knows her, that's going to call her and give her a heads up that, hey, the state police of Kentucky's wanting information about your accounts or whatever I was needing. So we have reached out early on to the FBI to see if they could assist us. And so we had a meeting with them. I think it was actually on the 28th. We had met with Agent Doug Johnson and Agent Derek Stroud at first.
And so they assisted you with this investigation going forward?
Yes. So during our initial meeting with them, they really didn't, they said they might could help us some with the phone records or whatever, but they indicated that they'd probably have to get approval from the supervisor to be able to open a case. And then it was a few days later, they notified me that they had got approval to open a case and that they were going to open a separate federal case for investigative purposes.
And you mentioned that you had to contact the California Highway Patrol. Why were you looking into Julie Harding?
Well, within a couple of days when she's not responding to any phone calls or anything, and then the most obvious issue that Michael Harding had going on in his life is this contentious divorce. So, at a bare minimum, I needed to interview her, or attempt to interview her, and that was pretty evident right from the beginning.
Now, what records did you obtain from her, or through any type of search warrant?
Yeah, so we initially just done a subpoena for her call records. I don't remember what day this was. It was probably 2 or 3 days into it. And so a subpoena for call records, call detail records is what we refer to them as, but it's less invasive than a search warrant. You're just asking for, it essentially shows you a list of the numbers and that the person is texting or calling, but it doesn't give you locational data or anything like that. So our initial submission was just for the call detail records. Initially, we only went back to September the 1st, so we did the subpoena, I think this may have been on the 30th, so I think it was from September the 1st to September the 30th.
And did you find anything in it?
Yes. So we started looking, we were looking at what numbers she's calling and texting, just seeing if we can cross-reference any names. When we're looking at it, we were running the numbers to see who the numbers come back to, that sort of thing. So there was a couple of things that jumped out just from the September records. There was this number that she was calling and talking to almost every single day, sometimes more than once a day. And it was all like voice calls, like the normal way, or most people anymore, the way they communicate is usually it's a mixture of voice and text messages. But in this instance, what we were seeing is that like there was no text messages, it was all voice calls. And then what we also noticed was that like at September the 8th, it's like those voice calls just cut off. There's no more voice calls after that. And again, we were looking at all of the numbers of people that she was talking to, that sort of thing. But this one particular number that jumped out to us, when we ran it came back to Thomas O'Donnell. And when we ran his name, he still had, like on his driver's license, he still had a Houston, Texas address. So remember when we looked at it, and the first thought when I saw that was like, so I couldn't understand. I was like, how does she know somebody from Houston, Texas that she talks to every single day? And then I got on his, looking on Facebook, I found his Facebook profile and saw where it looked like he had moved to California in May of that year.
Is that the first time you had heard that name, Thomas O'Donnell, or seen it?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that Thomas O'Donnell seated at the defense table right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Other than a name, did you have any other information about him? Besides the Houston, Texas?
Other than his driver's license still came back as a Houston, Texas address.
At this point, did you have any other evidence that was coming from Houston, Texas?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So you got this, and you said you looked through all of her records, and there was no other number that jumped out like Thomas O'Donnell.
Yes. So the first submission, the first thing we looked at was just back to September the 1st, and then we ended up we did another one. We went back even further. We went back to August the 1st. And the same thing, when we started looking through those records again, the same number for Thomas O'Donnell jumped out. And again, it was consistent. It was the same thing. You were seeing almost daily phone calls. Sometimes there was 2, 3, 4 phone calls per day.
So from August the 1st until, let's say, the end of September, or September the 8th, so that was probably the last call that was made
Yes.
between these numbers. How many phone calls between Julie Harding and Thomas O'Donnell?
There was over 100. I don't remember the exact number. I think we ended up, seemed like I remember we ended up going back even further. I think the FBI ended up doing a search warrant and go back even further. And it seems like from the very first contact between the two of them was July the 1st, and I want to say there was 194 phone calls between July the 1st and September the 8th.
Was Julie Harding talking to anybody else, according to her phone records, as much as she was Thomas O'Donnell?
No.
So what other information after her phone records did you find?
So the phone records, and then the search warrant that I referred to on this prepaid cell phone, the 732 number, when we started getting results back from that, number one, when we looked at it, you could tell that this phone was only used to carry out this murder. The only phone calls to and from this phone and text messages were to Alan Sewell and to and from Michael Harding. There was one phone call in there that was to AT&T customer service, and it looked like it was probably when the phone was activated. But the only phone calls and text messages sent and received from that phone were to those two people. So that was the first thing I noticed about it. And then we had also asked for locational data from the prepaid cell phone. And so we started looking at the location data.
Now, was there anyone that assisted in mapping this locational data?
Yes, so the intel analyst that posed, Stacy Kelsey, she had a mapping software that she plugged it in. And then also on the AT&T, just from my past experience working cases, on the AT&T records, when you get them, on the far right-hand side, it gives you, like, essentially it's a GPS, gives you coordinates, latitude, longitude. And so kind of a cumbersome way of doing it is sometimes I'll just sit at my computer and I'll look at the AT&T records and I'll look for a place. You can see movement on those when it's giving you the different coordinates. And so I'll look for a place that those coordinates, like it looks like the phone goes stationary for a period of time.
So
And then
what does that look like on those records, that phone goes stationary?
just like if you're looking at the coordinates on the far right-hand side, like you'll constantly see the numbers changing, which is showing movement, and then you'll get to a point where you'll see the exact same coordinates for different periods of times, and so that's an indicator that's gone stationary. So she was looking at it, and then I had also done, just scrolling down through it, I was looking at some places that it went stationary, and then I was putting in the latitude, longitude coordinates and seeing where those locations were. And also by this time, the FBI had contacted me back, and they had opened a federal investigation. So I had shared those records with them when I got them back, when I got the return. And so they had then contacted their CAS, their cellular analysis people, and they were also looking at the same records, looking at the location data.
So if you just looking at the locational data, where did it go stationary?
So I identified several places that were stationary, that was potential places to look at and see if we could cross-reference it with something else. One of the places that we identified early on was this Maristar Black Hawk Casino and Resort in Colorado. And then we had also identified what looked like a stationary position in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
And what happened at that point? When did you see that this prepaid phone was stationary?
So Detective Johnson and, Agent Johnson and Agent Stroud, we had talked about this, the location of Colorado, and so they called up to the Maristar Hotel and Casino Resort and got a guest list registry for that period of time that we were looking at when the phone was stationary. And so when they got that guest registry, they sent that to me. I immediately showed it to Stacy Kelsey, and then both of us were looking at it. And again, the first thing when we're going down through it, we noticed that Thomas O'Donnell's name is on there.
Now, you said that you had went through Julie Harding's phone records, and you're the one who found Thomas O'Donnell's name on those records, or his number on those records multiple times.
Yes, ma'am.
Was the FBI aware of the findings at that point whenever they pulled the guest registry in Black Hawk, Colorado?
I don't think they had started looking, they were cross-referencing the numbers, random numbers for, as far as I know, they weren't aware of Mr. O'Donnell or anything related to the case.
So once you get this guest registry, what do you find on it?
Thomas O'Donnell, his name is on there. And then, I may have skipped over this, but also on the locational data, another thing that kind of cued us in first of all is like when we look at the location data, this prepaid cell phone, it starts giving off locational data around Houston, Texas. So that was another thing that we saw pretty early on.
And did you recall what date the first time that this prepaid cell phone started giving off locational data?
August 28th.
And it was in Houston,
It was
Texas?
in the vicinity of Houston, Texas.
And you also at that point already knew that Thomas O'Donnell had an address associated with Houston, Texas?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what was the date that it went stationary in Black Hawk, Colorado?
I have to look back at my notes on it. It was August the 31st to September the 2nd.
So this is all before the murder,
Yes, ma'am.
approximately a month before Michael Harding was murdered,
Yes, ma'am.
that this prepaid phone is starting to give off locational data.
Yes, ma'am.
And it is it's stationary in Black Hawk, Colorado.
Yes, ma'am.
And the FBI has assisted with pulling a guest registry at this hotel.
Yes,
And you have now located Thomas O'Donnell's name as a guest.
yes, ma'am.
Now, where was the other place that this prepaid phone was stationary?
Look, it's Home to Suites in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Do you recall what date that was, that this prepaid phone was stationary?
That was on September the 2nd.
So after Black Hawk, Colorado,
Yes, ma'am.
still before the murder.
Yes, ma'am.
So did the FBI pull a guest registry in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and
I do.
did you view it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, find anybody
Again,
else?
identified Thomas O'Donnell on the guest registry for second and second.
At this time, I'm going to show you some documents. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? If you could look at, what are the documents I just handed you?
I'm sorry.
I said, what are
This is the guest registry from the Ameristar Casino and Hotel in Black Hawk.
And if you can see the screen,
If you, let me tell you something, if you use the Elmo, put that up on the Elmo, you can point. Understand what I'm saying?
I do, Your Honor, if you want to.
You want me to do that or instead?
It's fine.
That's
If
the
you
way
want
it's
to.
the whole different